Hey everybody, Shane here. Today I'm going to show you how to program MIDI drums and create a live sounding reggae one drop beat. So the drum sound that I'm going to use is from the last video. So if you haven't checked that one out, go check it out. It's called Reggae Drum Kit using Addictive Drums 2. And we're going to be using that kit for this session here. And what I'm going to do is record MIDI drums on my keyboard, and it won't sound great at all. It'll be super rough. But the whole point of this video is to show you how you can take your MIDI notes that you played and polish it up by, programming it and editing the velocity, moving notes around and all that stuff. So what I did, I created a MIDI track with piano, a wah clav sound, bass picking, bubble, and a pad sound. And it's just a reggae vibe that sounds like this. So just real quickly, we have the piano, we have the clav wah sound, we got the bass, we got the bass picking, we got the bubble, and we got some pads going on. So let's hit record and play a MIDI drum track, and we'll see what we come up with. Alright, so let's listen to what we've done. And we'll take off the click. All right, so it's timing is not that great. It just doesn't sit well, with the track. So what we're gonna do is double click on the MIDI track here, and we're gonna go in and edit this MIDI drum track. So let's start with the fill in the beginning, and I'm gonna change my grid selection. Instead of to the grid, I'm going to hit slip so I can move notes around freely. All right, so let's listen to this beginning roll. Okay, so let's tighten things up here. On the Mac, if you hit the period key and with a nudge of 0.005, if you hit the period key, it's going to move over to the right. If you hit the comma key, your notes will move over slightly to the left. So let's tighten it up slightly to the grid, and we'll try to keep the feel of it, but we'll just, move notes a little bit closer to the grid. So let's do that. So you can see that the timing is super behind. And this snare roll, I want to have one more hit before there. So let me jump to 16 note grid. It'll pop up the 16 notes. Let's move this chunk over to the left. we'll add one more 16th note here. And what we'll do is we'll add this note to the open hit. Here's a rim shot hit, and here's a shallow rim shot. So that's the sound that I want this last hit to be on. Raise that up a bit. But these rolls, I want it a little bit softer. So I'll pull these down. And let's see how that sounds. Alright. So let's tighten up this chunk here. We'll move this over to the left so that it lines up close to the 1. So this snare and cymbal, you can tell it's not hitting together. So I want the impact to be together. And then for these 2 rolls, you want it on the, these are 8 notes. So you want this hit to be closer to that line and this hit closer there. And so what I'm going to do is move these in chunks until this hit is a little bit closer. And I try to move things in chunks so that I keep the original feel. So you can see, there's a little bit more, it's a little bit more behind on this note versus this note. So let's check that out. Okay. Not too bad. We'll tighten up this hit here. And we'll hit, yep. And here I want an open hi-hat on the 1. I don't want that. I want it to hit on just a closed hi-hat. Soft closed hi-hat. There you go. And I move this over just a tiny bit. Alright, let's see how that sounds. Alright, so let's move on to the actual beat. Everything is ahead of the beat here. So push that a little bit behind. I want my hi-hat to hit with the kick and the cross stick. So if you remember from the last video, on G#1, I have my open or my shaft hi-hat hit sound. On F#1, I have the tip sound. So I played this beat, in quarter note hi-hat hits until I get to the syncopated hi-hat section here. And so what I want to do is have it with an 8-note vibe. So I'm gonna add in notes into here. On the Mac, if I hold down Control, it'll turn into a pencil tool. And I'll add in a note there. With the tip sound, so if you try to imagine how a drummer would play, those 8 notes would kind of lift up and would hit on the tip of the stick. So we're gonna try to mimic that, playing as much as possible. So most of the 8 notes will have it on the tip, and it's a bit lighter hit as well. So, and you can see up here when I click on it. Oh, and to change velocity, you're gonna hit down Command over the note, and it'll change it to that tool there. And if you click and drag up or down, you can change velocity. And so we'll start off at around 40 for now, just a really light 8-note hit. Do the same here. And I'll change this to 40 so that every time I create a new note, it'll create a note with a velocity of 40. So let's just see how this piece sounds. Okay. So I probably want those a little bit softer. Let's try like 20, 21. Right. Got those 8 notes in there. Okay. And then on the upbeats, with the skank, I want the hi-hat to hit a little louder. So it looks like I'm doing that here. And then on the downbeat, on the 1 and 3 here, 1, 3. So on those 2 notes, I don't want the hi-hat to hit too hard. So maybe on those, I'll have it at maybe around 55 velocity. You can look up there, see it changing. Around the 50s. And then the hard hit with the skank can be closer to, you know, in the 70s. Let's listen to that. All right, and here comes the syncopated section. So which is on the kind of like the triplet offbeats. 16th. It's on the 16th upbeat actually. So we'll move these to the right on this 16th and on this downbeat. Let's see how that sounds. So same here. Between these notes, I want a light tip shaft sound. And you can see how to change the sound. So let's listen to that. All right. Let's take the notes we added there and just, if you hit down, highlight the notes, hold down the Option key on a Mac, and then drag the notes over, it'll just copy the notes. So we'll copy these notes here. We'll lower the volumes here. And I'm not too sure if those are triplet notes or what. I think this note should be a triplet note. Yeah. So add another note here. These are way ahead of the beat. So we use our period sign, drag these over. And then hi-hat is not hitting with the kick snare, so I'll bring that back. And then anything on the 1 and the 3s, if we remember, I want those to be down at around the 50s. So let's check out how that sounds. This part sounds a little weird. Let's hear it again. Yeah. So this note should actually be an 8th note. So let's change our grid, go back to 8th, and we'll see how it is, just a little tiny bit lagged behind. And my 8th notes feel a tad bit rushed. So let's see what it will sound like if we just moved it over just a hair. That feels a tiny bit better. And now in this section here, what we just did, I want the cross stick to kind of hit a little bit louder. So let's see what it sounds with that velocity all the way up. can go a tiny bit softer. So maybe around 100 velocity. All right. All right, so let's do a few more notes of these. And then what I'll do is I'll continue offline. I'll edit the entire thing, and then I'll come back and show you guys how it all came out. All right, so we went through the entire drum track. Let's see how it sounds. Let's add a little snare hit on the one. And let's do kind of like a flange hit. And we'll do an open hi-hat here. And we'll just add a super quiet hi-hat hit at 1 velocity on the 1 just to close this open hi-hat. So let's see how this sounds. Right? I'll probably want that tiny bit softer and the flange a little bit tighter. Take out this 8 note. I'll add maybe a 16th here. See how that sounds. We'll start from the flange hit. All right, there you go. So we started off playing on the MIDI keyboard. We went through each hit, tightened it up. If you notice, we didn't tighten things all the way to the grid. We kind of kept the feel of what I played. You can see that this fill is just slightly behind. If you look here, this hit slightly behind. You'll see the dark colored notes are high velocities. The soft color notes, the lighter color notes are the softer velocities, and everything in between. So you see that, not everything is to the grid. The velocities are, all over the place. And then after I get this basic beat done, what I'll go through to, make it sound even a little bit more live is even alter these 8th note hits, because all of them are at, around 21 velocity. So I'll probably change them up, some 23, some 26. And what those different velocities do, even for the same hit, is it triggers different samples. So maybe there's a range of samples from, velocity 0 through 20, another range from 20 through 40. I'm not too sure how the Addictive Drums developers, how many samples per hit they did. But, if you change it up, you'll get different tones, you'll get different samples that will be triggered. So yeah, I'll probably do, another pass in a more advanced way to get the drums to sound a little bit more live. One thing that I noticed that I didn't do was increase the velocities for my cross stick throughout the song, because I want those to pop out a tiny bit. So what I'll do is, I'll pop these up a little bit. And I'll try to do it, at slightly different velocities. Again, we want to trigger different samples. So So some will make it, you know, a little bit louder. Some will make it a tiny bit softer. And there you go. So that's basically my method to programming live drums. It's very tedious, you know, going note by note, moving things around, getting the velocities right, making sure that things are tight but not robotic. So you don't, you know, some songs it'll work with things lined up perfectly to the grid. If you're working on, you know, a faster reggae song, but this song, you know, you want a little bit of feel to this one drop groove. And then, as I mentioned before, velocities, right? So let's, for example, say that I made this entire thing the same velocity. So here's before. And here's after. I'm gonna change all the velocities, set all to, let's say, I don't know, 90. Let's set all to 91. And if everything was the exact same velocity, this is how it'll sound. Horrible. There's no feel just by changing the velocities, not changing the timing at all. Just the velocities. It's a totally different sound. So, you know, play around, try to think like a drummer, think of what they're doing, think of the hi-hat and how they're playing the hi-hat, if they're hitting with the shaft or with the tip of the stick. Yeah, basically try to just think like a drummer as much as possible when programming drums. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Again, if you haven't checked out the first video, Reggae Drum Kit using Addictive Drums 2, this is, in that video I go through how I made this drum kit, which is here. So I show you, you know, how I set up this drum kit, what I did in the edit window, how I changed some of the drum envelopes. So go check that out. So that's about it. If you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.